Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, September 14th, 2017. It's time for another show. I have been checking my settings. Those of you following the continuing soap opera of our new equipment will be interested to know that, yes, Skype did reset its preferences yesterday, overnight after the show. We discussed too extensively yesterday, that Skype seems to reset its preferences on where the speakers play after I log off of that. So that's what causes the echo, is this weird reset. So I guess part of my morning routine for the time being, until somebody figures out a fix for this thing, is to open up the Skype preferences and reset them according to my chart every damn time. So I don't know. We'll see whether we can find a fix for that. Everybody's still updating this software. Who knows where it'll go, but at least it's working, and I think we've got rid of the echo, so long as I remember to turn those speakers to the right setting every day. And I guess maybe that's one of those things perhaps we could possibly automate somehow, and then we'll figure out exactly how to get this thing right. Okay, well, what do we want to talk about this morning? Which side of yes, there's a deal, no, there's not a deal, yes, there will be a wall, no, there isn't going to be a wall, yes, it's already built, no, it isn't, Mexico's going to pay for it. I don't know where to come in on this one. In the morning, the story was supposed to be that once again the Democrats in Congress had struck a deal with Trump, that Trump was going to revel in the good press from having worked out something, but his base reacted pretty much as they should be expected to have reacted to a deal that would likely protect, who knows what it was supposed to do. But the noises that were coming out were that he was going to trade some sort of increased border security funding for protection, possibly continued protection of Dreamers, which was pretty much what, it's pretty much exactly what Armando, I think, predicted would come out of any negotiations about a deal. And then, of course, once that came out that was possible, it was immediately attacked by his base, and then is ready to tweet, there's no deal per se. I think the nuanced view of all of this is that it wasn't that a deal was announced, it was that an agreement to work out a deal, an agreement in principle, in other words, was worked out. And it's still legit to say that there isn't a deal, but, it doesn't make the president look particularly consistent. But who cares? He's not consistent, and in that subject area, he will back out of any deal anytime, whenever it suits him. He just has to figure out whether or not it suits him. And I think now he's flown down to Florida to, muck about there and make it look like he's in charge of the recovery. How are we doing, by the way, on getting that $1 million check down to Houston for relief of Hurricane Harvey? I'm not certain that we ever saw that thing arrive. Does anybody know? Anybody have the canceled check on that one? Just wondering if maybe he got around to that one. I assume he goes down to Florida today and pledges a 1 vingentillion personal dollars from his own account, which of course never comes through, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess that's what's on tap today. Plus, of course, some discussion about whether or not there's a wall or it's already been built. This morning's tweet garbage. Look, Greg has already sent me, I guess, a screen cap of the morning's tweets. So this morning has been mostly, before he took off for Florida, was about claiming that the wall was already mostly built, and that really it's going to take the form of, how does he put it? He's going to take the form of repairing the fencing and repairing parts of the wall that were in bad shape. Mexico called to say, I already paid for the wall. As a matter of fact, I guess they taped up some old torn dollar bills and figure they're good for that. You don't need to ask us for money anymore. I see this morning he also sent me a copy of Ryan Lizza's tweet that MAGA Twitter is absolutely on fire right now, as hardcore supporters seem shocked that Trump made a lousy deal, even though that's basically all he does. I don't know when they were going to discover that. Yeah, well, they should be on fire, and we should have started the hashtag, has the Donald landed yet? It didn't really catch fire the way being angry at Trump did. But leaves us in the same place we've always been. I guess that's what leads Bill to kick off the morning with his morning tweet. Daily Kos Radio is live now. That's what all this blather is about. Is the president still a dumb baby? Kagro X investigates. That's what I'll spend my morning with. Yes, it seems he's still more or less pretty dumb. And, he's pretty much still a big baby. I think I had it right when I said, and I should have trademarked, that the president is a dumb baby. I mean, that's kind of where we are. And Coulter is mad. I noticed one of the president's morning tweets before getting back to the trying to deny that there was a deal, et cetera, et cetera. He was speaking out in a way that made it look like he actually favored the Dreamers and the DACA Act because he went back to his old position that he's stated years in the past about how who could really be for kicking out people who were brought to the country through no fault of their own when they were children and who have since worked hard and gotten good jobs and done well in school. How could you possibly be against that? And, your entire administration is against it. And you came out against it the other day when you instructed your Justice Department, your Attorney General, to come out and say, yeah, we are for kicking them out. And by the way, the reaction of Twitter, of his followers, to the assertion that, as he puts it, does anybody really want to throw out good, educated, and accomplished young people who have jobs, some serving in the military? Really? And he continued then by saying, they've been in our country for many years through no fault of their own, brought in by parents at a young age, plus big border security, which is his way of segueing to the other part, I guess, of the deal he thinks he had, but he now maybe denies. I don't know. That's not much in the way of construction, but it is Twitter. We'll give him some leeway on that. But yeah, the almost immediate response from his biggest Twitter followers were, hell yeah, we want to kick out good, educated, accomplished young people. What do you think we were talking about? Right away, the alt-right deplorable Twitter was out and vocal. And I don't know. I wonder whether he reads responses. I guess he must not. I doubt he reads much of anything. Greg Dworkin is with us now all the way from Connecticut, USA, to share the headlines this morning. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning. How are you?
Okay. Are you echoing in your own head?
No.
Okay.
Well, in my own head, yes. But
yes.
I hear a lot of voices in my own head I won't tell you about.
Okay. You want to hear about mine? Or
no.
Let's go to the news. Okay. One of them is Ted Cruz, which is a real problem.
I think I'll refer you there. I'll just leave it at that.
Excellent. If you have a good referral, that would be nice. Yeah, Ted Cruz has been talking to me, and I'm really bothered by it.
Yeah, well,
But he likes me a lot.
Hot and bothered by it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's round things up. I thought I had seen one of the top responses to that tweet was one of his top famous alt-right deplorables, but now I don't see it. So whatever.
Well, I'm sure it's there. If one of the best roundups, if you will, of all the different good reactions is on David Drucker's tweet link there, his account, which I did send you.
Okay.
And for example, he's got, he had the big one last night, which I don't know if he mentioned, which was Breitbart's headline, Amnesty Dawn.
I heard that Breitbart was upset and that they had an anonymous editor there say that it was horrible and blah, blah, blah. I don't know why it has to be anonymous, but whatever. Okay, yeah, all right, I'm looking at Drucker here.
Right. So I'm down about 2 hours there. Presidents usually drive party building ahead of midterms to maintain allies in Congress and prepare to reelect, not Trump. the GOPers are complaining for 8 years. GOPers contended with hostile president who drew crowds and undermined them at every turn, and now not much has changed. And then this comes out, and Byron York says, has anybody read it? On crime and more, Schumer's DACA legislation bill is more lenient than Obama's original order. Okay. And David Drucker says, hosting Hugh Hewitt's This AM in Hugh's absence, half a dozen calls so far from GOP voters, split decision on Trump's DACA deal. More callers on the Hugh Hewitt show, more split decision, voters on real Donald Trump's DACA deal with Chuck and Nancy. And one of the regulars, who is a Twitter regular, David Drucker, writes, and a guy named Andrew, if it's split on Hugh, it's a bloodbath everywhere else. Alex Jones floated the deep state was drugging the president, and he may be right. Just to give you an idea how people are reacting here. Ned Ryan, the only compromise can be DACA for the wall. He's a conservative. The president has to manage the Congress. Patrick Ruffini, it's amazing. Hannity validation is all that stands between us and 3.5 years of left-wing policy.
All right.
Okay. Dana Bash says the reality is Ryan and McConnell are A-OK with Donald Trump's leaving them out of a Dreamers deal.
Yeah,
because
probably.
It shields them from blame. But Drucker says they're still going to be responsible for it. It only gets a vote if they allow it. Chuck Grassley says, the morning news says you made a deal. Have your people brief me. I know it undercuts the Judiciary Committee effort. Tell me what you're doing.
Yeah. It's pretty weird. By the way, I did find that the top name deplorable person who was the first response to his "Does anybody really want to throw out good educated people?" is Cassandra Fairbanks, who is I recognize from a prior story is the favorite alt-right young blonde lady who involves herself in all the most deplorable things. And, her answer is the very first one to his tweet. It's almost instantaneous. Does anybody really want to kick him out? And the answer is, yes, are you effing kidding? So, okay.
Right.
There you go.
I asked NRCC chairman, says David Drucker, Representative Steve Stivers, if Speaker Ryan would put DACA deal on the floor without support from the majority of Republicans. No way.
Okay.
Let's see, Paul Kane from the Washington Post. By year's end, Obamacare will be the law of the land, maybe even fortified, and Dreamers fully legal. Would have been a great year for President Hillary.
Well, things would have been those would be accomplishments as opposed to compromises or failures. But
right.
Well, maybe not.
Now,
they would have looked at her emails instead or something.
One of Trump's tweets was, no deal was made last night on DACA. Massive border security would have to be agreed to in exchange for consent, would be subject to a vote. Byron Tao, reporter, looked at this and said, scratching my head here because this legitimately sounds like the outlines of a deal.
Well, it does, and that would be consistent with the view that there was an agreement to reach an agreement, but he probably should have held that closer to the vest, but, Donald.
Right. And then, and I do this so that you don't have to and your listeners don't have to, one of the folks pointed me over to, you should take a look at r/Trump over on Reddit to see how they're reacting. And let's just say they're not happy.
Is it r/Trump or is it r/the Donald or?
I don't know. I didn't even pay that. I clicked on it at the time and I actually looked at it and then I turned it off and then took a shower.
The super crazies are r/the Donald, which is a tag for him that I'm sorry that we mostly gave up. That people who know him from the old New York
he's
days
always the
know
Donald.
He's the Donald. Yeah. That's Ivana's term for him. You had to refer to him, and she did, as the Donald. Which Donald? The Donald, for one thing. But yeah, even in their own house, the Donald wants something. Now, it was clearly implied, how he lorded it over everybody, even at home. So,
right.
Okay.
So Ryan Lizzo was right. MAGA Twitter is absolutely on fire now.
Yes.
Now, here's some interesting things about this.
Oh, good.
So I turned on, this is the background. The fact of the matter is nobody knows what Trump is doing. Nobody knows what he's talking about. Many people who have watched him for a long time put out this periodic reminders. It's ironic because you don't really know what side they're coming from. if you walk out of a room thinking you have a deal with Trump, think again, because that's not necessarily the way it went down.
Yeah.
That's the general premise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you say that now, are you talking about his base and how they should feel, or Nancy and Chuck and how they should feel?
Yeah, everybody. Everybody has the same problem. And of course, good observation. People were saying, good callbacks. Lordy, I hope there are tapes of their conversations.
Well, Nancy put in writing what actually she thought happened.
Oh, yeah? Oh, she made a memo like Comey did.
Exactly.
Wow. You can't
that's
not
been
do
sent
it with
around.
him.
So she talked about the things that they talked about at the time, because with him, that's what you have to do.
A contemporaneous account. Excellent.
Yeah. And it was sent to the press. I don't have that right in front of me. It's short, but basically outlines what not what they thought was a deal, but general stuff.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know? And, for example, that she urged him to consider bolstering Obamacare, something like that. Nothing that would commit.
Right.
But
Okay, fair enough.
the outlines of what they thought they agreed on, at least so that it's on paper. Now, the funny thing is, does Trump look strong? No. Does he look like a deal maker? Not really. However, everything is seen through the prism of what you want to see. So those reporters who are desperate to normalize Trump and make this the pivot will talk about the great political courage that he has.
Yes.
In making this deal that isn't in existence yet, prior to the outrage from his base. And I saw an example of that because I accidentally turned on Morning Joe for like 5 minutes. And Harold Ford was on talking with Mike Barnicle and Joe Scarborough about what all this meant.
Okay.
It was like the train wreck that you can't avert your eyes. You have to watch a little bit.
I guess.
So here's the deal. So Scarborough says, "Oh, Amnesty Don, that's my line. They took it from my song that I did on my album."
Oh.
That was his. It's all about him. Whether he was the first to ever come up with that or not, I don't know. I don't really care if he does get credit for it. That's fine.
It's not actually very good, but okay.
But the point that he made is that only 12% of the public wants to throw the DACA people out. So the idea that the Trump base is going to desert him over this while this firestorm is going on, the idea that the Trump base is going to desert him over this is crazy because it's all about Trump to them. Trump could do anything and they'll never leave him.
That could be. I mean, there's so many weirdos. There's no way to describe them all.
Here's the thing. And then Harold Ford chimes in and says, yes, and of course this is make his numbers will go up on the theory that Republicans and the Trump base love him no matter what he does, and Democrats will simply flock to him because it's such a good idea to help the DACA people, to help the dreamers. And I'm listening to this and saying, what planet do you guys live on? I mean, Harold Ford is the only reason Harold Ford isn't the worst analyst on that show is because sometimes Hugh Hewitt is there. But the idea that all of a sudden Democrats are going to say, oh, we love this guy now, let's just embrace him, is insane. There is nothing Trump can do ever that's going to make Democrats trust him and like him.
Right. Well, that's, I think, at bottom true. No one's going to trust him and like him. He may be right in the technical sense that there might be people who say things like, and maybe literally say, I love this guy, but it doesn't mean I love this guy. It's more like, I love this guy. You can play him like a fiddle.
This gets to the point that I've been making for months and months and months and months, and that is that the Trump base is not monolithic. They were split on Hugh Hewitt. They may have 12% who will never accept this because they're the Ann Coulter, Steve King, by the way, who hated this from Iowa.
Yes.
Kind of thing. But 12% of a small base, they only got 35% support. You lose 10% of that, 12% of that, and you're down to 30. I mean, it matters when your base is small when you lose 10% of your base.
That would be.
You can't afford to do that.
Yeah. Now, they may rebound quickly because they're weird and crazy, and it's easy to placate them.
They may not show up to vote in 2018. I mean, that's what this is all about for right now. And the idea that they don't matter is just stupid. And the idea that, it's all going to be bolstered by replacing them with Democrats who now love Trump and will therefore vote. I mean, that's idiotic.
Well, it doesn't even make any strategic sense if you believe
the only base that this is going to please is the handful of reporters that are waiting for him to pivot.
And they don't vote.
and they don't vote.
And they're proud not to, by the way. That's we know that about them. So that one works. They might as well be yard signs at that point. But
yeah, Blake Hounshaw was the one that said, you got to give him political courage.
Yes.
Courage. You got to acknowledge the political courage of this deal. Right before Trump took it back with a tweet. I think you were the one that pointed that out.
Yeah, his tweet did not age well, and it is only 20 minutes old.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what are you doing?
It happened before he tweeted
why,
that.
Why are you even trying to give him credit for this? You don't even know what he's doing.
They got to, it's a hot take. You got to win the morning.
It's a compulsion.
Yeah. Well, it's their job to be the first one out of the gate with the one that proves to be correct. And I think, I think we've learned over the years that with punditry, I don't really know how much credit you get for being the first one out of the gate with what appears or ends up being true. But it's okay to scatter shot because whatever ends up being false just gets forgotten. But I don't even know what the reward is for being first among the punditry to say something as banal as all of that. But yeah, that was pretty dumb, but I guess the other spin that's emerging out there that the trend spotters like Dave Weigel have their eye on is maybe this one will work. This is a Nixon to China moment. Only Trump could have made this deal, which therefore means that, as it said in the proposed spin, loser Obama couldn't make this deal, but Trump, the deal maker, can. I mean, the deal is terrible for him, so yeah, sure, great, make the deal. That's fine,
depending upon who was running Congress at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even understand what that kind of rationale means.
It's not a good one. It's just what's
Nixon
coming.
Going to China meant that he was going to bring along Republicans along with Democrats in doing that and normalizing it and making it acceptable.
Yes.
Right? Trump is dealing with a
True.
situation where most of the country already sees DACA as acceptable.
Yes,
You're going to give him credit
went.
for that? That's stupid.
In this analysis,
remember what Joe Scarborough's line was? 12% of the country wants to, deport all of the import, export, deport all of the dreamers. Well, that means the rest of the country doesn't. Then Trump's going to get credit for that.
Sure.
Already what the situation is.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess in that scenario, all they do is they say, yeah, I mean, sure, he's not going to be able to bring his own party along with him, but the point is he went to China.
The point is he brought along some of the reporters. I mean, some of this is so self-referential, it's just insane.
Well, yes.
Because nobody else is looking at it the same way they are.
Yeah, well,
his base, his true base of racists, and this is a great way to separate the racists from the non-racists. You know, which part of the base is okay with this and which part of the base is not.
Ah, yes.
Right? The ones who are not okay with this, you know who they are. You know what to call them. And the ones who are okay with this are just as deplorable because they voted for him. But they're the ones that were willing to overlook the other half in order to get what they wanted. And if you want to really separate which group is which, this is a perfect way to do it.
Yeah, and with any luck, then the people who were willing to overlook all the deplorables in order to get their tax deal will also not get their tax deal and then eventually abandon him on
top of everything else. You know, like Chuck Grassley, and his party are being left out to dry on this. And there's no possible way. And so, play this out a little bit down the road. So what happens if Trump and Nancy and Chuck and Nancy, Will and Grace, they all decide to get together and have a TV show and break bread and do their Festivus thing and get all the grievances out, and then they agree on something, then you have to take it back to Congress.
Yeah.
And it's still up to McConnell and Ryan to get this passed. How does he do that?
I don't know.
Who's going first, Ryan or McConnell?
I don't know. What I'm trying to think of is who can be forced or worked around for getting this thing to the floor. It's more straightforward.
I mean, it's like that old, Joe was Stripes had it, the Bill Murray movie. It's an old joke. Like you're in line, and the sergeant says, "I need a volunteer," and everybody but one person steps back.
Yeah.
And who's that? Ryan?
Yes. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm trying to work through the actual procedure of it. Is it easier to get a discharge petition from done in the House? But I mean, who's going to sign the thing from the Republican side? I don't know. But they could put together nearly 200 signatures from the Democratic side. Yes, but I don't know. The rest of it. You got to get around. One of them has to agree to bring it to the floor. And, man, I don't know which one does that first.
So, I think the proper thing to do is not analyze this is what it means. Nobody knows what this means. The proper thing to do is to step back and say, you just gave everybody in Washington and the press and the public and your base the distinct impression that you don't know what you're talking about. We have no idea what you're going to do. You really can't be trusted. And that's really what I'm taking away from this. Let's see how it plays out.
Okay.
And I don't see how that helps him.
I cannot think of a good reason why it should be thought of that way. I do see another Ryan Lizza tweet here that says, another Trump betrayal of some of his most diehard supporters as word comes out that the Charlottesville resolution we discussed the last couple of days now enrolled and on its way to the White House. White House indicates that they're ready to sign.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're about 30 seconds from our first break this morning, so let me get my music all ready and cued. Don't I have to press some buttons? Yeah, that's right. I definitely do have to do that. So, well, let's take that break and consider what we want to continue with on the other side after this short break for station identification. You're listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Netroots Radio. We'll be right back. The music gets exciting again, so it's time to bring the show back. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Netroots Radio. I'm David Waldman. I'm here still with Greg Dworkin. That was super professional and everything. I mentioned our names and all that stuff. I should probably mention the names of our radio stations at the next one. We're getting better and better with this, but the stories keep getting better and better too. Some new tweets came in over the big break. Where were we? We just had left off saying Ryan Lizza had tweeted about more Trump supporters being afraid of having been betrayed as the White House announces that they plan to sign the Senate Joint Resolution, which, I guess this one's crediting it to Jerry Connolly, so different authorship, I guess, this time for credit. But yeah, this means that he's putting his signature to a document that says, well, all it really says is that he should later on go out and separately denounce all the white supremacists and neo-Nazis who were involved in the Charlottesville organizing and elsewhere. I don't think there's anything that binds him to following through on that. I think that probably Stephen Miller has convinced him, just sign it and get it out of the way and everyone will forget about it. And I think that's largely true, but it's a moment that was had here, and he can't erase it.
So I have this interesting conversation between Kyle Kondik, political scientist, and Nick Riccardi, very sharp AP Western political writer, follows Colorado and other politics out in that direction, in Jones' direction. Kyle Kondik says, if Trump ends DACA order, but then gets it repassed along with the Democratic support for border security funding, isn't that a policy win for him? He took something that was already in effect, ended it, hypothetically supported its reauthorization along with something he wanted. And Nick Riccardi points out, but it's something he vowed to end and not reinstate during the campaign. It's a policy win, but for somebody who doesn't resemble a candidate. It doesn't resemble the candidate he ran on, he means. Kondik says, well, Trump makes so many contradictory statements, it's hard to nail him down. He also said he doesn't want to be cruel to dreamers. And Riccardi says, well, giving dreamers legal permanent residency or even citizenship is contradictory to the policy gestalt Trump presented during the campaign. That's why Ann Coulter wrote, isn't everybody ready to impeach him now?
Yeah.
And Kondik says, well, it certainly is, but it's also an outcome that one probably will poll well. Two is actually, dare I argue, good policy. And Riccardi says, well, it'll be interesting to see what it does to his numbers. It may not do anything to his numbers because nobody knows what to make of it, and those numbers are fairly fixed at this point. And what's interesting to me is this is a conversation about a normal politician, and Trump isn't normal.
Yeah.
So he's not normal in a lot of different ways, but he's like not normal in his head either. And he's certainly unqualified and not, prepared to be president, and he's showing it every time he tries to do something. So I don't see how you normalize that and say, oh, well, this is a win for a guy who really can't do anything and is incompetent. He's, at the end of the day, still incompetent, and he's going to wind up having, lots of issues and problems that come with this that are not going to be as simple as fixing it with a tweet. And again, I'm looking at very sharp analysts, trying to play the game of if he were a normal politician, what would this mean? Mm-hmm. And I just don't think you can look at it that way. Well,
it doesn't help us understand him any better to look at it that way. I mean, there is that small point. If he was just a regular politician who was understandable, predictable, stable, etc. Yeah, I mean, and I guess then you could argue that it was it would be a policy win if he took an existing policy, fake threatened it, reinstated it, and got a concession for basically maintaining agreeing to maintain the status quo. That would sort of be true. But, one, you don't have any idea whether he's going to reverse course on it again the next day.
And then after that again.
Right, because he may have – I mean, one of the real difficulties is that a politician like him could see that and say, yeah, okay, it's a policy win. And so he makes this deal on a Monday. He has his policy win announced on a Tuesday. By Thursday, he's now threatened the same policy again, thinking, I don't know, last time I said I was going to repeal it, I got a concession. Yeah, but you were repealing Obama's thing. Now you're repealing your own thing. I don't care. Okay. Well,
doesn't matter to me. I just want a W.
That's kind of crazy. That's you're nuts, actually. Yeah. I know. Oh.
Yeah. So again, on Drucker's feed, he's got CNBC Now. Mick Mulvaney. There was no final deal with Democrats last night, but saying a deal is on the table would be fair.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Phil Mattingly just walked by a House GOPer in the Capitol. Mattingly says, you have any idea what's going on? Him? No idea.
Yeah. Well, not surprising. And, you bought it, boys, so enjoy.
Right. So I'm just saying, and I'll just leave it at that and finish this portion of the segment. I think it's a little premature to try to analyze what it means for Trump to have made this deal, whatever you want to call it, proto-deal, outlines of a deal, whatever you want to describe it as. It's a little premature to describe how it's going to affect him, his base, and politics in general when we still have no idea.
Yeah. Huh. It opens the door for some interesting, pseudo fake news stuff. I think it would be great if reporters like him would walk the halls of Congress, wait for 2, 3, 4 hours, and then go up to Republican congressmen at random and say, "So what do you think about what the president just did?" Just with nothing. Don't wait for anything to happen. Just start doing that. And
well,
what do you mean?
Now?
What do you? Oh, you don't know?
Oh, you don't know? It involves your committee.
Watch if they start panicking. Oh my
God! Did you hear what Chuck Grassley just said?
Oh
he said it involves his committee, and he has no idea. You don't know?
It's a great environment to go around panicking them and say, what do you think about the latest Trump tweet? I don't know. What did it say? You don't know? Oh, my God. How could you be out of the loop like this? Where have you been?
How could you not know? You better call your office.
Yeah, right. We should just tweet that all day long. Call your office is the way Celissa does.
Trump tweeted, call your office, right. So anyway, we'll just leave it at that, and we'll have to see over time how this sorts out. But I think it's basically, let's go back to a theme that we started a long time ago. It's chaos.
It is that.
He is a chaos agent. We said that years ago. It's still true.
Yep, pretty much. Okay.
All right. Let me end with Trump OGE is going to let Trump team legal defense funds collect dark money.
Office of Government Ethics.
Trump ethics watchdog moves to allow anonymous gifts to legal defense funds.
Oh.
In a reversal of internal policy. This is a story from Politico.
Yes, okay. I
The
can get
Office
that
of
one.
Government Ethics says funds benefiting aides caught up in the Russia probe may accept anonymous gifts from lobbyists.
What? Why?
What if Russia pays a lobbyist and the lobbyist pays the fund?
Then we will have a story.
What if Russia just pays the fund because it's anonymous?
We will have a story and a prosecution.
This is just so weird.
Yeah, it's not right. But I mean, well, this is really super classic. I don't know what whose move is this. You just put on the cloak of the Office of Government Ethics. He's the president now. Trump gets to name who he wants as the head of the Office of Government Ethics, and the guy takes the job in agreement with the agreeing to the policy of I'll just basically do whatever you need me to do, and because it comes from the Office of Government Ethics, some portion of Americans will say it must be ethical, and 99% of us will recognize, wait a minute, that's the most unethical thing I've ever heard of in my entire life, and that includes the last 5 minutes.
Well, let me give you a couple examples because this, historically speaking, because the political article does include them, one from each side of the aisle. You can picture a whole army of people with business before the government willing to step in here and make the debt go away, said Marilyn Glynn, a former G.W. Bush-era acting OGE director who worked in the office for 17 years. Lawyer fees have long been the source of controversy for presidents under fire. Nixon's White House took covert steps to pay the Watergate burglars, and a trust set up during Bill Clinton's first term to deal with Whitewater and other controversies had to return hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from a controversial Arkansas friend who was later indicted for campaign finance abuses. Mm-hmm. At issue for the Trump staffers is a 1993 OGE guidance document that gave a green light to organizers of legal defense funds for government employees to solicit anonymous donations from otherwise prohibited sources, like lobbyists or others with business before the government. That Clinton-era opinion reasoned that if such donors were anonymous, such donations could be legal because the employee doesn't know who the paymasters are.
I see. All right. Well, that's clever, but yeah. All right. Well, I'd say out of step with where I am on that.
Right. Well, former OGE officials say the ethics office quickly determined that guidance had flaws.
It did.
And instead advised attorneys to stay away from all lobbyist donations, anonymous or not, as they arranged funds benefiting the Clintons and a cadre of senior White House aides. It wasn't in the interest of the public to have people guessing who really is donating here. We preferred more sunshine in the process, Glynn said. Yet, the 1993 guidance document was never officially changed, in part because aides working in the G.W. Bush and Obama administrations didn't face significant legal scrutiny while still serving in government.
Well,
that part is good news. Scooter Libby, Valerie Plame stuff happened after Scooter Libby had already left the government.
Oh. Well, yeah.
So they just never changed it.
I guess so. And I mean, that's supposed to be taken as a good thing. They never changed it because they didn't have to change it because they just didn't get involved in situations that required raising large amounts of money for legal defense funds after that point. But only because Libby, as you mentioned, had left government and wouldn't have been covered by an OGE policy, I guess, as he was outside of government.
Right.
Though ethics, the E part of that still applied.
Well, Walter Schaub, who was running the place right before he left, was actually planning on fixing a lot of this. He said in May he instructed his staff to add a brief one-sentence note to the top of the underlying 1993 document to signal that internal practice had diverged from the formal guidance in capital letters. So, like it's your inside voice.
Oh, capital.
Your outside voice. Note, some statements in this opinion are not consistent with current OGE interpretation and practice. Capital letters. Read the message. Am I supposed to shout that into the microphone so people understand it? You know?
Well, yeah.
It's all in caps.
It says it's even in a red font.
Yeah.
Huh. So I could turn on your echo for it. How about that?
That would work.
Okay.
That would actually be pretty funny. We'll have to have a signal, on Skype and say, please turn on echo. This is going to be capital letters in red font. What I'm about to say.
That's not. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again.
You can't trust Trump. So, It's true. Anyway, so that's going to be something I think it's going to be lost in all of the other chatter today, but something that's just worth keeping in mind. And, of course, the other thing, maybe one of the reasons that Trump wanted to do this DACA thing today is because Mike Flynn Jr. is in trouble yesterday, and he always likes to change the subject whenever Mueller and the Russia probe is in the news. Yeah, and it was yesterday, and it probably will be tomorrow. But today it's all going to be about DACA. And with Flynn that, Jr.'s I think I'll leave you. But thank you so much for allowing me to come on, fixing the echo and doing all that other stuff. All right. I'll be back Monday, and I'm sure a couple of things are going to be happening between now and then. But don't expect resolution of what the heck is going on with Trump because, it's impossible. He's not a normal person.
Yeah, well, okay.
And that's not a good thing. I don't say that as, he's super normal. No, he's
abnormal.
He's disturbed.
Abnormal.
Yes. All right. Take care, and I'll talk to you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Greg. Take care. Have a good weekend. I'll have to I saw that that Flynn and Flynn Jr. were both, again, in the headlines and in trouble, but I don't think I caught exactly what Flynn Jr. had been up to. Flynn was in trouble, as I recall, because he was taking payments from outside interests that were interested in selling the construction of nuclear power plants in the Middle East. And I did get some information sent my way about it yesterday, but I didn't get a chance to listen all the way through it, as it was a reference to the coverage of the issue on the Rachel Maddow show. And, well, you know how Rachel does things. She does things the way, kind of the same way, I guess, that we do things, extensively, thoroughly, and for some time. So I got a 45-minute clip about it, and well worth listening to, I'm sure, but I couldn't get all the way through it yesterday. It was a very busy evening, and there we are. Kurt sent me this one Audible video on Twitter, who said that this will explain all about Flynn and the Saudi nuclear plants and Russia, and he sent me this nice clip, but I just couldn't get all the way through it. But I got the sense of things as Rachel Maddow was setting all that up. And so I have a couple of articles put aside that address some of those issues. Let's see if I can actually find them. But what was more important, I thought, was that by the end of the evening, the story had progressed even further, and what I heard from Maddow's clip that I was able to get through yesterday, wow, well, let's see, where did she start with this thing? She was basically talking about, I guess the connection was that the Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates had made an unannounced visit to the United States in December, and as she explained, an unannounced visit to the United States would be an extraordinary breach of protocol, that when a high-ranking government official of any government, any country, or whatever, or a high-ranking foreign dignitary of any sort visits the United States, as she put it, sort of the unbending protocol, except for when it's bent, I guess, like right here, is to notify the United States government, look, I'm coming in here. If and as she says, if no reason other than security, we're going to be responsible for their physical security while they're here if they're a high-ranking government official of some other government. And so there ought to be a Secret Service detail, plus there's all sorts of State Department protocol that's going to go on, and you have to, you got to be on your toes when that happens. And he went around that protocol and visited the United States without announcement. And this is how things unravel for Republicans in general. I mean, I guess, we talk about even like, we know Donald Trump doesn't have any idea how to govern. And really, I mean, I guess his fans would say, well, why should he? He's never been in government. That's why we want him in government. We want a fresh perspective and all that. Well, even the people who have been in government for a long time don't know how to govern from the Republican side. and they don't have any idea what the rules are and what the protocols are. So no one was going to tell him, certainly, or instruct Donald Trump or any of the top people on his campaign. Well, you can't just have this crown prince arrive here without telling the United States government. It's a huge breach of protocol, and it's going to lead to bad things. And it did lead to things that are bad for them anyway. But also, I mean, people who ostensibly are supposed to know how government works, Republican members of Congress like Devin Nunes, who still sits, at least nominally and perhaps, de facto, at the head of the House Intelligence Committee, but more importantly, at the head of its investigation into everything, Trump, Russia, and everything involved with it, despite the fact that he didn't recuse himself. And you recall before he finally said whatever terminology he used to say he was setting, himself apart from the investigation about which he was lying, he dropped the bombshell about the accusations that Susan Rice, the former national security advisor to President Obama, had. Well, he came out and said it, and so did Trump. They basically said she had committed a crime, a national security breach, in unmasking the names of some senior Trump officials. You remember that whole claim. And it was debunked pretty quickly and ends up being tied to this whole thing. Now that Susan Rice has told her story, we have this here. Manu Raju from CNN Politics has this story exclusive. It was exclusive last night anyway. Rice told House investigators why she unmasked senior Trump officials. It wasn't that she didn't do it. It's that she didn't do anything wrong in doing so. And that was what came out of the first round of probing of this story. And it very quickly became obvious that Nunes was either set up or had set himself up to be the conduit for this information, and that the Trump folks were just hoping that the word unmasking would sound so sinister that no explanation could ever make it look legit. Well, there is an explanation, and it worked. The story here, as Manu Raju tells it, goes like this. Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice privately told House investigators that she unmasked the identities of senior Trump officials to understand why the Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates was in New York late last year, multiple sources told CNN. The New York meeting preceded a separate effort by the UAE to facilitate a back-channel communications. Remember that they were so interested in this? Back-channel communications between Russia and the incoming Trump White House. This would have been where Jared Kushner wanders over to the Russians and says, "Can I use your secure equipment inside your embassies so that I can talk to the Russian government without the American government knowing about it?" And even the Russians are like, "No, that's too crazy for us." And so they needed a separate back channel. And I guess this idea arose. The Crown Prince, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, my best guess at that one, arrived in New York last December in the transition period before Trump was sworn into office for a meeting with several top Trump officials, including Michael Flynn, the infamous spy, the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, the other infamous spy looking for a way to communicate with the Russians without letting the Americans know, and his top strategist, Steve Bannon, sources said. The Obama administration felt misled by the UAE, which failed to mention that Zayed was coming to the United States, even though it's customary for foreign dignitaries to notify the U.S. about their travels, according to several sources familiar with the matter. Rice, who served as then-President Obama's national security advisor in his second term, told the House Intelligence Committee last week that she requested the names of the Americans mentioned in the classified report be revealed internally, a practice officials in both parties say is common. That's unmasking. Rice's previously undisclosed revelation in a classified setting shines new light on a practice that had come under sharp criticism from the committee chairman, California Representative Devin Nunes, and President Donald Trump, who previously accused Rice of committing a crime. But her explanation appears to have satisfied some influential Republicans on the committee, undercutting both Nunes and Trump and raising new questions about whether any Trump associates tried to arrange back-channel discussions with the Russians. I didn't hear anything to believe that she did anything illegal. Florida Representative Tom Rooney, a Republican helping to lead the panel's Russia investigation, told CNN of Rice's testimony. He declined to discuss any of the contents of her classified remarks. Through a spokeswoman, Rice declined to comment about her testimony. Nunes refused to answer questions when asked about Rice Tuesday evening. It's unclear precisely which Trump officials Rice discussed at the House meeting, but multiple sources have confirmed to CNN that Zayed met at the time with Flynn, Kushner, and Bannon. The 3-hour discussion focused on a range of issues, including Iran, Yemen, and the Mideast peace process, such as it is, according to two sources who insisted that opening up a back channel with Russia was not a topic of discussion. Still, the fact that the New York meeting occurred prior to the Seychelles session, remember that one? And that the UAE did not notify the Obama administration about why the Crown Prince was coming to the United States has raised questions in the eyes of investigators on Capitol Hill. What do you mean? Where is this all going? A little bit of explanation in the next section. Long story short here, though, is, as we mentioned, and as I think Rachel Maddow makes a little clearer than Manu Raju does here, the basic protocol is a high-ranking government official is coming to the United States. You notify the American government. They break with that protocol, but he is who he is. He's the Crown Prince of the UAE. He gets noticed when he comes to the United States. I don't know what he looks like, but people do. It's known that he's here. The intelligence services were going to monitor his activity anyway. He would be subject to FISA surveillance simply because he is a high-ranking official of a foreign government. Friendly or otherwise, we check what you're doing, track your movements when you're in the United States, and very often monitor conversations. And they know this. Everyone does. It's standard protocol. So, for one thing, Zayed probably had a pretty good idea that the American intelligence services would know he's there, but it doesn't really matter whether he knew that or not. I mean, it's nice to know about him, to know whether he's like a smart, stable guy or not, but that's not the issue right here. Anyway, he comes to the United States, makes no arrangements with the then current Obama administration, and goes to meet with the Trump transition team in Trump Tower, which also ultimately there's nothing wrong with his doing, and that's probably why he wasn't worried about doing it or even being seen doing it. Why you wouldn't tell the Obama administration that you're doing it, because that I don't know. I mean, why not? You tell them that and the Obama administration would say, okay, I mean, I guess you can go ahead and do that. It's a transition to the next administration. We're not going to prevent it. And they weren't going to say anything at that point. So he goes and he has the meeting. And the big issue here is, why didn't he tell us he was coming? And that raises suspicion. So now you have the American intelligence services noting his presence, noting that he did not alert us to his presence, and saying, I wonder what the hell he's doing. Why wouldn't he tell us he's here? Let's check this out. And they might even have been interested over at the intelligence services. Wow, is this going to be like, is he going to go to like strip clubs or something? Is that why he didn't tell us he was coming? I'll volunteer for that assignment. I'll follow him. And then they got the enormously disappointing news that they were headed to Trump Tower. Although at the time they might have said, excellent, we're headed to Trump Tower. That place is full of mobsters and they traffic in all kinds of insanity, and we're going to see something really good here. I don't know. Maybe they weren't that excited. But the bottom line was the fact that he didn't tell anybody about the fact that he was coming to the United States was weird, so they were going to follow him anyway. This time they follow him with eyes just slightly wider open than usual because he's hiding something. So what's he hiding? He goes to Trump Tower. They say, all right, let's find out who he's meeting with at Trump Tower. Okay, compile a report, put it in a report, send it to the National Security Administration, and the National Security Advisor sees that there is such a report and says, hey, that is weird. Why is the Crown Prince of the UAE coming to the United States without going through protocol? Well, I don't know exactly why he's here, but he had a meeting with people at Trump Tower. Really? Well, I mean, that's to be expected. But then again, why would you have that meeting without announcing that you were coming? Because it is to be expected. Why bother hiding it? Who did he meet with? Well, we can't tell you unless you ask us to unmask those names. Okay. So that's when Susan Rice says, oh, all right. All I need to do here is find out who is he meeting with to find out whether it was something like crazy or just routine or what. So she finds out it's top officials in the Trump campaign, and we know who now. And I don't think she made anything of it. She just said, interesting. I guess I'll keep that in mind in case, I don't know, it turns out that he's committing treason or something like that, right? I doubt I'm going to have to bring that up because, let's face it, it's just so rare that our American presidents plot treason in their transition periods, and it really is. But then again, this is not normal. So she probably took some mental note of it. But other than that, nothing probably came of it right away, even though they knew that there was definitely some weird stuff going on with Russia. But he's not from Russia, right? So what could it be? Well, we'll discuss it some more after the next break for station identification. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Now in our second fabulous hour. We left off before the break trying to piece together from Manu Raju at CNN and my recollection of Rachel Maddow's segment, which Kurt kindly sent to me in the evening hours, trying to figure out exactly how this all comes together. And I guess I should announce up front, I don't know yet because I didn't get to listen all the way through the Rachel Maddow segment. And I wonder whether I should take a look at the blog and see whether maybe Steve Bannon or any of the other writers there put together a written version of the segment that Kurt sent me. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to listen all the way through it, and I worry that we'll be in violation of some copyright if we simply play the entire segment. Of course, it's also 45 minutes, so that's not likely to happen here. But let me see if I can scroll down. Did they put together a written version on this? Well, maybe this must have something to do with it because Flynn is in the headline of it. I'm just going to sort of scroll a little further down. I hope that she gets into detail. We'll open this one up and see if there's a written version that I can share with you. Oh, I mean, maybe taking me to a video clip, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was the exact same clip that we had been sent. Yeah, all right. Well, that's not going to be usable for us. It itself is 20 minutes long. So, all right. Well, at any rate, from what I was able to piece together here, well, for one thing, the next stage of Manu Raju's, the next section of his write-up about it, explains the Seychelles thing, which many of you probably remember, but just in case you don't, the Trump Tower meeting came shortly before the UAE brokered a meeting to open lines of communications with the United States and Russia, with a clandestine January meeting in the Seychelles Islands in the Indian Ocean, according to reports in CNN and the Washington Post. That meeting is now under investigation on Capitol Hill, though it's unclear whether Rice mentioned the Seychelles meeting in the testimony. A senior Middle East official told CNN that the UAE did not mislead the Obama administration about the Crown Prince's visit, but acknowledged not telling the United States government about it in advance. That's some pretty nuanced thinking. Not telling them, but showing up anyway. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is it not misleading? Because we didn't say he's not coming, but we also didn't tell you he was coming. Well, that's a matter of interpretation, but it doesn't matter. The meeting, which took place on December 15th, 2016, the official said, was simply an effort to build a relationship with senior members of the Trump team who would be working in the administration to share assessments of the region. By the way, great targeting. I wonder who was doing the UAE's targeting. At the time, it probably looked from the outside like that was going to work out. I'm going to meet with Mike Flynn, he's going to be the national security advisor. That's wise. I'm going to meet with Steve Bannon. He's going to be the chief strategist. I'm going to meet with Jared Kushner. He's going to be something. He's the brother-in-law. And we know him. He's been around trying to raise money for his stupid projects for however long. Remember, he couldn't get any money out of Qatar, so he was very upset about that. But he stopped in at the rest of the Middle Eastern capitals looking for money. I don't think we gave him any, but whatever. He's an important person. And then a couple months later, 2 out of the 3 of that gang are gone. Flynn lasting only a couple of weeks. By that point, by December, it was already, December 15th. I guess a good month or so, nearly a month had gone by since I was openly tweeting that Mike Flynn is a spy and would be, hopefully, I guess, you were supposed to conclude that would mean he would be out on his ass fairly shortly, but you never know with this administration how long they're going to keep a spy sitting around. Bannon, I didn't know how long he was going to last, but in hindsight, poor targeting by the Crown Prince. But what can you do? He's a Crown Prince. He's not an intelligence agent, or maybe he is. I don't know. Who knows what they do over there? He could probably be the head of the secret police as well. I got no idea. Anyway, and he's not going to tell me. So December 15th, he's meeting with this gang just to share his assessment of the region. And he's probably got a pretty good one. Crown Prince of the UAE knows better than I do what's going on there, I'm sure, even if it's a little bit tainted. The meeting was about ascertaining the Trump team's view on the region. They hate it. And sharing the UAE's view of the region. They love it. And what the U.S. role should be. I don't know. Sell them weapons, I guess, probably. No one was coming in to sell anything or arrange anything. Now, that's where I think maybe we're not getting the whole truth. Because the rest of this section insinuates that, for one thing, they were there to arrange this Seychelles meeting. And the only conclusion I can draw, and Kurt, you may have to help me. If you're listening live, I'd appreciate your help. If you're not, tell me afterwards when you get around to listening to the podcast. The fact that you sent that clip to me, and I could only put in 10, 15 minutes worth of listening before I had to go. I should tell you about my day yesterday, except I'd bore you to death. But it was long and difficult. So I got the first 15 minutes of the segment out of the way, and it was all about this, the unmasking, the lack of announcement by the Crown Prince when he was headed to the United States. The fact that you sent me that clip in response to my questions about the sales of nuclear plants throughout the Middle East and the plan that Flynn backed for it leads me to conclude that perhaps there really was some salesmanship involved at some level in this meeting. And was the Crown Prince there perhaps also to push the idea of looking for contractors to build nuclear power plants in the UAE, among other places? Was that the point? Did anybody watch the segment or listen to the segment in question? That would help answer the question, I would guess. But it seems like that's where that's going. Let's continue with Manu Raju's article, and maybe down at the end he gets to some of that as well. I told you I was disorganized going into the show. I was up so late. Never mind. Okay, it's not about me. It's about this. Here we go. So he says, no one was coming in, this official does, no one was coming in to sell anything or arrange anything. A spokesperson for the Crown Prince declined to comment. The Seychelles meeting and the circumstances around it has been the subject of interest to Hill investigators looking at any potential link between the Trump campaign and Russia. How does Russia get back in here? The Washington Post initially reported in April that the UAE brokered a pre-inauguration meeting between the founder of the security firm Blackwater, Eric Prince, and, we all know Betsy DeVos's sister, Eric Prince, who's a close Trump ally and an associate of Vladimir Putin's in the Seychelles Islands. That's the meeting that's taking place. Eric Prince and one of Vladimir Putin's pals. And he's got a lot of them. The purpose of the meeting was part of an effort by the UAE to persuade Russia to curtail its relationship with Iran, including in Syria, according to the Post. That's not a bad thing. It's just a thing that if you're coming to make a deal like that with an incoming administration, it's your right to do it, and you only hurt yourself by trying to shroud it in secrecy. By not telling anybody that you were coming and for what purpose, you piqued their interest. They watched you anyway, as you knew they were going to. And then you have Susan Rice having to ask herself, is this something I need to be worried about or not? Asking for the names to be unmasked, probably concluding that there's not a great deal to be worried about with respect to the relationship between Trump and the UAE anyway. And if it didn't immediately smell of Russian interference, it might just have been set aside. But now it's a data point in a broader web. And that was foolish of everybody involved to have done this. Okay. So where were we? We were saying that it's not a particularly bad thing for the UAE to try to broker this deal and to try to get out of it a Russian agreement to curtail its relationship with Iran and its profile in Syria. It occurred, this meeting did, shortly after Bannon, Flynn, and Kushner also met in Trump Tower with Zayed, whom the Post said helped arrange the Seychelles meeting with Russia government officials to set up the private discussions with the Trump team. But the senior Middle East official told CNN this week that Prince's name, that's Eric Prince, not the Crown Prince, Prince's name was not discussed at the Trump Tower meeting, and Prince himself has said he did nothing wrong, as he usually likes to say is the case, telling CNN's Aaron Burnett last month, I was there for business. Well, your business is something wrong, but that's part of the problem. But both the White House and Prince have strongly denied that Prince was working as a liaison for the Trump administration. Prince said he met with a Russian while at the Seychelles, but I don't remember his name. Of course not. Why would you have notes about that, right? It probably lasted about as long as one beer, he said about the meeting. What a common touch that was. That's really nice. Now, explaining the unmasking, this article continues. For her part, Rice had been called to the House Intelligence Committee to testify partly over what Nunes and other Republicans believed was an abuse in the practice of unmasking, or revealing the identities of Americans who were communicating with foreign officials under surveillance by the U.S. intelligence community. Simply unmasking the names of individuals in classified reports does not mean that their identities will be revealed publicly, and Rice denied to the committee that she leaked classified information to the press, sources familiar with the matter said, but Rice's suggestion that she unmasked the names of U.S. individuals who turned out to be Trump associates over concerns about the propriety of the Crown Prince's visit to the United States could help her fend off attacks that she was out of line in the actions she took. In fact, Representative Trey Gowdy, South Carolina Republican, who's helping lead the House investigation. There's like lots of people helping lead the investigation, including the guy who's not supposed to be doing it. Well, Gowdy told the Daily Caller, that rag, nothing that came up in her interview led me to conclude that she improperly unmasked the names of Trump associates or leaked it to the press. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, did not say explicitly whether Trump still believes Rice committed a crime, but added the issue of leaking and unmasking needs to be investigated. Fine. That was the most hilarious thing about all of it. Oh, yeah, well, she unmasked it. That needs to be investigated. And what is the result of the investigation? The result of the investigation is, yeah, you were sneaking around with senior diplomats from the UAE to arrange clandestine meetings in the Seychelles so you could have a back channel to Russia. Why did you do that? We're back on you and Russia again. That was the dumbest idea you've had in a long time. Investigate this. You knew what was at the bottom of this. What's wrong with you? And the answer is they didn't know what was at the bottom. They don't know anything about what they're doing. They're engaging in habitual whataboutism, and it all backfires on him because everything backfires on Trump because he's dumb and he doesn't know what he's doing. And his campaign and his administration are managed by equally idiotic people who also have no idea what the implications of anything that they want to do. Whatever they wake up with in their head that morning, they're going to do it. And they got no idea what kind of problems it can lead to. Unsurprisingly, that kind of carelessness and capriciousness ends up blowing up in your face a lot. So it did here again, too. Returning to the article, we've seen illegal leaking of classified materials, including the identities of American citizens unmasked in intelligence reports, Sanders told CNN. Why did she say that? We haven't seen illegal leaking of classified materials, including the identities of American citizens unmasked in intelligence reports, have we? Or I guess they're saying the fact that we know who the names are was a leak, and I guess that perhaps by itself is true. But why you asked to investigate whether Susan Rice did it or not, well, I don't know. Maybe at the time you really thought you were going to find some trail from her to the press. But instead what you found is, well, now the press believes she was totally justified in unmasking anyway. So you got a problem for yourself. So Sanders, I guess, goes on with this. That's why the president called for Congress to investigate this matter and why the Department of Justice and intelligence community are doing all they can to stamp out this dangerous trend that undermines our national security. They love leaks, of course. All administrations do. Nunes was forced to step aside, only he didn't, from running the Russia investigation amid a House ethics inquiry into whether he improperly disclosed classified data. Well, we've seen this illegal leaking of classified materials, and Devin Nunes has been the one who did it. Why aren't we investigating that any further? It's an ethics inquiry. Okay, well, why don't we have some kind of criminal inquiry instead, just to make sure things are going right? I mean, you said you wanted to get to the bottom of leaks. He's leaking. You just investigated Susan Rice. Not only did you, here's what you learned about Susan Rice. One, she was right to unmask you. And two, you come to the conclusion that she didn't leak anything. Good job. Well done. Meanwhile, Devin Nunes, him we haven't gotten around to investigating yet. And he didn't really step aside. The ethics inquiry came in the aftermath of the bombshell comments that Obama administration officials had improperly unmasked the names of Trump associates, which is wrong. A revelation that Trump used as cover for his unsubstantiated claim that Obama had Trump Tower wiretapped during the election to spy on him. It turns out that it was you got caught sneaking around, at least in this instance, with a top foreign official who should have known a lot better and who you should have had a team in place that would have advised you, you know what, until he declares his presence in the United States to the American officials, you guys can't meet with him because it's going to invite surveillance that is unwarranted. I mean, there's going to be surveillance anyway, but at least they won't bother to unmask your names. If he had only said, I'm coming to the United States and I'm going to meet with the Trump officials because it's transition time, there would have been a report. Rice would have seen it. She would have said, I know all about that. I don't need to unmask anything. And we would have been done with that particular section. We may have been back here later because they were arranging something stupid and improper, but it wouldn't have been Susan Rice asking those questions. She would have said, I heard about that. What can you do? If they plot to plant the bomb somewhere, let me know. So there we are. The ethics inquiry came after he instead accused her of improperly unmasking, which led Trump to read the word improperly and say illegally and raise the issue to the level of a crime. She's committed a crime here. The Justice Department said in a court filing on Friday that the DOJ and the FBI have no evidence to support Trump's claims about the wiretapping or anything else. But on Tuesday, the Republican who took the investigation from Nunes, took over it, said there was no reason to bring Rice in for further questioning. She was a good witness, answered all our questions. Representative Mike Conaway, the Texas Republican now running the House Russia probe, told CNN, I'm not aware of any reason to bring her back. Now, that concludes the article. Anyway, by the way, Mike Conaway, the third Republican member of the House mentioned as running or helping to run the House Russia probe in this single article. It's chaos over there, just like it is everywhere else. Now, there's no connection made in here to the nuclear power plants issue. So it's a little bit confusing to me. And I'm wondering what I'm missing, except, I'm making the assumption that some of these nuclear power plants that were planned for the Middle East region might have been in the UAE, because the UAE is in the Middle East region. Could that be? Was that what it was supposed to be? I'm a little confused about that, and I guess I'll investigate that and listen to the rest of the segment and see if I can report tomorrow on what I found out about that connection. Let's see. What have we to add in all this? There are many more stories here, and one we haven't gotten to, and one we need to. Let's see. Rebecca Romans brings up one that's at least fun and well worth mentioning. Martin Shkreli's in jail finally again. We know he was out on what, on bond. I guess he went to court not long ago, and I guess he was. I didn't even follow the story. I imagine he was convicted of something, but they weren't going to put him in jail over it. But he was on, some sort of probationary type release. And then I forgot to mention this story the other day, but I guess, I don't know. Shkreli, he loves being in the news for controversial stuff. He's very alt-right in that sense. I don't know whether he really and truly identifies with the alt-right, whatever the hell that thing actually is, if it is anything. But, he loves making outrageous comments to the press. And so, let's see. Shkreli was convicted in August of defrauding investors of 2 hedge funds he ran. That was pre-pharma days. But as he was awaiting sentencing for securities fraud, he got mad at Hillary Clinton. And what the hell did he say? This is nuts, and I have to catch up on it because all I heard was peripherally. Okay, he said something nuts and crazy about Hillary Clinton and wanting to get a hold of like a lock of her hair, and did it in a way that implied that he was interested in paying for her to be assaulted, which is, not smart. Shkreli, who had been free on $5 million bail since his December 2015 arrest, was silent and stony-faced as U.S. Marshals led out of the U.S. District Judge Kyo Matsumoto's Brooklyn courtroom. Is this am I looking at the right article here? Yes, it's a Huffington Post piece that Rebecca retweeted somebody else's tweet that had that included. So Brendan Pearson's piece. But yeah, what a strange thing. Matsumoto ruled that Shkreli's September 4th post, made shortly before Clinton embarked on a book tour, showed he posed a danger to the public. She rejected arguments by Shkreli's lawyer, Benjamin Brafman, that the post was protected free speech. Judge says, nope, this is a solicitation of assault in exchange for money. That is not protected by the First Amendment. Wow. It's, I don't know. It's just sort of a very strange thing. Do they give a short description, like a sanitized description of what it was that he asked for? I don't even really know that I have the clearest explanation of it, but I know it did. It certainly came across as a solicitation. I think he was going to pay $5,000 for this. But what was he doing? Was he making a voodoo doll with the hair, something like that? I don't know. Is it worth it? Is it worth the time to find out? He's in jail. That's good. We like that. It's about time, I guess. I don't know. I think I'm about done with Shkreli at this age. There's so many other things to do, but I did want to note that because that's a story that everyone will take at least some private glee in, and maybe even go public with it. And I don't blame you for doing so. Okay. Here's another story that deserves a brief update. Steve Mnuchin and his S-head wife, who were in the news around the time of the eclipse. I'm going to get some auto-playing video here any second from ABC News. That's right. ABC News had to have their video autoplay for us on the internet because God knows their voice has been silenced in America, and there's just no way for us to get to hear what ABC News has to say unless they force it on us. But not everybody does a radio show, and not everybody has equal reason to be annoyed by autoplaying video. They just are. Anyway, I told you about Mnuchin and his wife visiting Fort Knox just in time to watch the eclipse from the roof of Fort Knox. Fun. interesting, of course, to go to Fort Knox as the Treasury Secretary. But, of course, she raised hackles, whatever they are, by Instagramming herself deplaning from a government plane for their eclipse watching trip, carrying all those expensive shopping bags and, prattling on, I guess, to her friends about what expensive items she had bought while she was on this little jaunt. But that was only interesting, I think, to her and to her friends because she was deplaning from a government plane. As I theorized, an Instagram photo of her getting off of her own private jet or her husband's private jet or however they own it, jointly or otherwise, or, God forbid, a commercial jet with all of those shopping bags would have been tacky and beneath her. This was to show that not only had she done all this fabulous shopping, which of course is of some interest, but she had done so on a government plane, which you guys can't do, but I can because I married the government. You see? So that's what made it of interest. But you'll recall that there was even more uproar over the idea that, over her response to people who said, yeah, going to watch the eclipse and then going on a shopping spree on the government dime in a government plane is really kind of rude and unethical, you might say, as they, as it got put on Facebook. I guess, here's the exchange down here. Mnuchin's wife managed to stir her own controversy surrounding that August trip to Kentucky when she lashed out at a stranger on Instagram, an incident for which she later issued a public apology. Linton, that's her last name, although I don't know, did she change it to Mnuchin? Anyway, probably not, because she's got a profession. She's a professional actress, and she's probably keeping the name. Linton posted a photo of herself and her husband stepping off a government jet and wrote, "Great day trip to Kentucky." By the way, everything's hashtagged. Almost every word of this is hashtag. Great hashtag day trip to hashtag Kentucky. Hashtag nicest, hashtag people, hashtag beautiful, hashtag countryside. It's either an ironic joke or she has no idea what hashtags do or mean. But she went on to include hashtags of various luxury designers she was wearing, most of whom I don't know anything about. Let's see. Roland Mouret pants. I'm guessing it Mouret, M-O-U-R-E-T. Tom Ford sunnies, which I think is rich person talk for sunglasses. Hermès scarf. Valentino rock stud heels, Valentino, and USA, all hashtagged, prompting one user to reply, "Glad we could pay for your little getaway, hashtag deplorable." Now, that's where things went off the rails for Linton, because Linton responded by belittling the woman in a series of comments and even mentioned her honeymoon. She says, "Aw, did you think this was a personal trip? Adorable. Did you think the U.S. government paid for our honeymoon or personal travel? LOLOL." Which is always funny to me. Why anybody would type LOLOLOL as opposed to HAHAHA, I have no idea. Yeah, laugh out loud. That's, why not just, okay, I don't know. She doesn't understand hashtags. She doesn't understand LOL. She doesn't understand abbreviations or how they work. But as deplorable as that was, it wasn't the end of the story. And as you know, these Republicans are awfully stupid, and they invite investigation of themselves in stupid ways, and then they get investigation of themselves in stupid ways, and then they end up looking even dumber. The previous story, right, accusing Susan Rice of improperly unmasking names and leaking names to the public. I demanded an investigation, only to find out that it leads to an investigation that uncovers an improper meeting, two improper meetings taking place in the transition. Well, this one's similar. I'll tell you about it after this short break. Apparently, that microphone didn't want to turn on. Welcome back, finally, to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. It's always a sign of trouble, and maybe I should take it as a warning ahead of time that the Yeti microphone is getting a little bit old. The mute button doesn't like to let go of things. It likes to maintain control. So probably time to preemptively start worrying about whether it's time to replace it. I've just jinxed myself, I'm sure. Anyway, where we last left off before the break, it was a little extra long, that one. We had just said about how we were just talking about how dumb it was for them to have demanded investigation of Susan Rice for the unmasking, and is equally dumb, of course, and perhaps more so, for Steve Mnuchin's wife here. What's her first name? Is it Linton? Is her last name? What's her first name? I'm not familiar with her acting work. I'll scan this article to see if it was, it's alliterative, right? Like Laura Linton or Louise Linton. There we are. I wouldn't have guessed that one, but I knew it was alliterative. Anyway, you'll recall that she was taunting this person back for having called her deplorable. Did you think this was a personal trip, and did you think the U.S. government paid for our honeymoon or personal travel? Well, here's a twist. Boing. It turns out that billionaire Steve Mnuchin, who was too cheap to pay his own commercial fare or chartered private jet fare to Kentucky to watch the eclipse, was also too cheap to do that, or at least to offer to do it up front for, yes, his personal travel, and yes, his honeymoon. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin requested government jet for European honeymoon. That's the ABC News story by Justin Fischel, Brian Ross, and Jordan Phelps, all credited with the written side of the piece here. Secretary Steve Mnuchin requested use of a government jet to take him and his wife, they've been married for 10 minutes, remember, on their honeymoon in Scotland, France, and Italy earlier this summer, sparking an inquiry by the Treasury Department's Office of Inspector General, sources tell ABC News. That's why it was so easy to initiate the inquiry into his use of the government jet for his Kentucky day trip. They were already investigating him for the attempted use, anyway, of government jets for improper purposes, so it was easy to piggyback it right on the one they were already doing. Officials familiar with the matter say it's highly unusual to have made this request. The highly unusual ask for a U.S. Air Force jet, which, according to an Air Force spokesman, would cost roughly $25,000 an hour to operate. And that's not out of the question for a jet of that size and with this particular set of personnel. But anyway, it was put in writing by the Secretary's office, but eventually deemed unnecessary after further consideration by Treasury Department officials. Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat of Oregon, as you know, the top Democrat on the Senate Finance Committee, said in an interview with ABC News that Mnuchin's request for a government jet on his honeymoon defies common sense. That's putting it kindly. Effing stupid is really where we wanted to be on this one. You don't need a giant rule book of government requirements just to say to yourself, this is common sense. It's wrong, Wyden said. That's just slap your forehead stuff. And it's pretty true. Mnuchin, an independently wealthy former Goldman Sachs banker, how did Goldman Sachs get into this White House? That's crazy. Has already triggered a review of his travel for using government jets to travel to Louisville and Fort Knox, Kentucky last month. The Inspector General, was that the first of them? Oh, that's all right. That's interesting. The way that makes it sound like they were investigating the Kentucky trip first and then got around. Did they investigate the Kentucky thing and in the course of finding, of looking at the evidence in that one, find his wife's Facebook or Instagram post saying, "Did you think the government paid for our honeymoon? LOL." And then say, "Wait, did we?" And investigate it and only to find out they didn't in the end. They did not, as far as I know, use a government jet to go on their honeymoon. But they must have said, we better ask. Did they? Okay, well, they didn't, but there is this written request to do that. But thankfully, the rest of the Treasury Department had their head on straight and said, no, you can't do that. Oh, my God. Mnuchin's office denied he took a trip the trip to Kentucky to watch the eclipse. Although, what did he say he did there? He did indeed watch the eclipse from the roof. But that wasn't why I went there. There happened to be an eclipse that day, so I went upstairs. I mean, what? He said he was there to attend meetings on tax reform. That's a lie. And the Treasury Department said the Mnuchins would reimburse the government for Linton's travel costs. And I'm sure they're happy to, well, not happy. They're certainly capable of doing that. They're unhappy to do it. An official within the Treasury Department's Office of Inspector General said that in addition to reviewing the Kentucky trip, it started an official inquiry into Mnuchin's honeymoon travel request. Wow, I can't believe that happened backwards. That's really true. Oh my God, what a nightmare this administration is. They're so goddamn stupid. I can't take it. Justice knows. He tweeted a while back here, the Trump administration is just further proof that the crooks always think they're smarter than the cops. That's a terrific description of it. It's classic, right? You didn't have to come up with that one on your own. It's just true of crooks all over the place. I can't believe they were investigating Kentucky first, and then they probably read that. Did you think, that's so funny. LOL in your face, Louise, you big dummy. That's really stupid. I mean, she shouldn't be the target of my wrath or anything, but that's just, who cares, right? Mnuchin, I should focus on him or focus on Trump. But God damn it, that's stupid. What's the matter with you? Well, she wasn't, I don't know whether she's otherwise smart or whatever, but I mean, Mnuchin isn't even Treasury Secretary because he's such a genius. So I don't know. Transitive properties of genius, who knows? That was dumb. Sorry. I can be done with that. A spokesman for the Treasury Department told ABC News that the secretary requested government travel for his honeymoon out of a concern for maintaining a secure method of communication, as if Trump was going to listen to you. The secretary is a member of the National Security Council and has a responsibility for the Office of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, the spokesman said in a statement. It is imperative that he have access to secure communications, and it is our practice to consider a wide range of options to ensure he has these capabilities during his travel, including the possible use of military aircraft. Well, the spokesman added that the Secretary's office ultimately decided the use of military aircraft was unnecessary after it became apparent that other methods for secure communication were available. Mnuchin's office has also strongly denied that the Secretary's opportunity to watch the solar eclipse within the so-called path of totality factored into his decision to visit Kentucky at that time, which included meetings on tax reform and a tour of Fort Knox. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who is from Kentucky, of course, met with Mnuchin during that trip and tweeted a photo of them watching the eclipse together, complete with proper eyewear, unlike the president. Aside from the president and vice president, travel on military aircraft is typically reserved for cabinet members who deal directly with national security, such as the secretaries of defense and state. One senior Treasury official who has worked with a number of past secretaries said that military aircraft are only used in extreme circumstances, such as if the secretary had to be rushed back to a meeting in Washington, D.C. with the president. Another former senior Treasury official who worked closely with Mnuchin's predecessor, Secretary Jack Lew, said it would have been exceedingly rare for the secretary to use military aircraft for official business, even for official business. The only exception to the rule was foreign business travel. As for private travel, there is not a chance in hell that the secretary would have considered using military air, this former official said, Secretary Lew, anyway. Adam Stump, a spokesman with the Department of Defense, which oversees and operates all government air travel for the executive branch, declined to comment on the specific request made by Mnuchin's office, but cited existing departmental policies regarding the use of government aircraft. Generally, when other federal executive agencies request use of military airlift, there should not have been an apostrophe S in that, but we'll get to that later. It is provided on a reimbursable basis pursuant to Title 31 U.S. Code Section 1535 and 1536, otherwise known as the Economy Act, Stump said. Noah Bookbinder, Executive Director of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, a Washington, D.C.-based ethics watchdog, was critical of Mnuchin's request. People can do whatever they want on their own time, on their vacations and in their houses that they live in, but they can't be expecting taxpayers to foot the bill for a Hollywood lifestyle, Bookbinder said. Meanwhile, Mnuchin's wife managed to stir her own controversy. You know all about that. And then how about that? I love the end. Did you think the U.S. government paid for our honeymoon or personal travel? LOL. Two people familiar with the matter say Linton was not aware that her husband had requested government travel for their honeymoon before making that comment. So, it's not her fault. That's it. That's the story. I really just wanted to wind up and deliver on that one because what the hell? What's wrong with you people? And the answer is, I don't know. I've always gotten everything I've ever wanted before, so why wouldn't that continue now? They're not cut out for this kind of work. This is the problem with, we want an outsider here. You want to keep policy radical. I mean, I guess you're entitled to do it, but you got to, the deep state that they're worried about is the people who know what happens when you push certain buttons and pull certain levers. That if you want to just do this, it's going to have ramifications, and these are the ramifications. You need to consider those things. The deep state talks you out of stuff because it's stupid or crazy or reactionary, but because it has consequences you as a non-government person probably don't anticipate. Like for Steve Mnuchin, I'm sure he thought that the excuse that, well, I'm the Treasury Secretary and I have some kind of, national security doodad that I got to do or whatever. So I need secure communications and, am I not important enough? I think I'm a super important guy, so I should travel on one of these government aircraft. And the idea, before in his corporate life, I want the company jet. I'm going somewhere. And they don't ask questions. And it's improper and it's still stupid use. And these CEOs do it all the time. I'm going on vacation. And I want to take the corporate jet. Now, they're billionaires and he could own his own private jet and take that. But he doesn't because they're all cheap a-holes. I mean, basically, that's it. The typical CEO procedure on this is the company buys the plane and then everybody knows that the CEO and perhaps other senior officials will get to use the plane from time to time. But the CEO being the top guy, answering to hardly anybody, there's supposed to be accountability, but really in real life there's not. And so they say things like, I'm going on vacation. Now, we pay you $1 bazillion as it is, and you have $1 bazillion more dollars in options, and you're a billionaire in your own right here. You're going on vacation, wonderful, fantastic. Let's pretend you deserve it from all your quote unquote hard work. Maybe it's even true. Leave, go, buy a plane ticket. When other people want to go on vacation, they go on, I should get a plug here, Expedia.com, pay me, right? Anyway, you go online, you buy a ticket, you go. Well, no, that's disgusting. We don't fly with little people. We're going to charter a plane. Fine, whatever. Buy your own plane. If you have $1 billion, buy your own plane, hire your own pilot. Let them sit in the hangar and eat lunch every day unless you go somewhere. You can afford it. No, fine, you want to charter a plane? Terrific. That's good. That's economical. Why buy a plane if you don't do that much travel? Just charter it. Just go. Just pay for it. Do it, right? Never. They won't do it. Instead, the company needs to have a plane. Somebody who's watching things and bean counting says, why does the company need to have a plane? The company doesn't go anywhere. Why does the company need a plane? Well, I might need to fly somewhere to conclude a really awesome deal. Well, with who? Who are you dealing with that's so awesome that isn't reachable by commercial air or charter air for that matter? Well, the real answer is, as CEO, my time is so valuable. I cannot be expected to be sitting through, I gotta go through airport security and I gotta fly to this city and rent a car and drive 2 hours to no, I need to be able to land right on the spot where I belong, maximize the use of my time. Now, why is a CEO's time so valuable? A CEO's time is so valuable because if you calculate the amount of money he makes per minute or per hour, it's very, very expensive. Now, whose fault is that? It's yours for giving him that salary, those people who I'm asking to approve my travel or approve the purchase of an airplane for the company. Well, then the company says, well, is it really worth having the expense of our own plane sitting around for you to fly around and make deals? When was the last deal you made that was outside of a major city or that required you actually going and doing the thing as opposed to sending someone else? Oh, yes, right. Well, those other people that I send, well, they could save lots of time too by flying direct and not having to go through security. There's an argument to be made for a corporate jet. And if you do a lot of traveling, fine, terrific. But what really happens is the jet is under the command of the top brass of the company. And then when they want to go skiing or on vacation, they say, I'm going to take the company jet. Why? Well, I thought we bought this jet for you to go close deals. Well, for one thing, I might play a golf with a guy I might make a deal with. So there you go. That's business right there. And of course, I might need to come back at a moment's notice. And of course, my time being so valuable, even though I'm on vacation, I'm going to be working on the way back and forth. And I need to be able to do it with, all my communications equipment. And it's good for the company to be able to get me there and back quickly. I get my vacation time in, but no additional time is wasted getting me there and back. Plus, whatever. I'm always working as it is, so you might as well always be paying for me to live, essentially. So lots of luxury items are paid for by the board, by the company, and some of the kickback is they get to use the thing once in a while too, I guess. And so I guess Mnuchin probably thought, I'm part of the government now. I'm one of the members of the board of the government. I'm in the cabinet. So when I want to go someplace, the company gives me a plane. Even Donald Trump, who, by the way, when he travels all over the place, he claiming to be a billionaire, he doesn't even do this. Like, he doesn't even own his own planes either. They got Trump written all over it, but he has the companies buy the plane, and then he has the companies on whose behalf he's traveling, even though he's like the sole proprietor essentially of all of these companies, pay the air group every time he goes someplace. So he just moves money around and takes a piece of that too. We've discussed this in the terms of the Secret Service scamming that he's doing every time his family travels on a plane other than a government one. But I mean, all these CEOs appear to do a similar thing. And I guess he just thought he could do the same thing in the government and no one would ask any questions. It doesn't matter that you're not going on official business. Well, down to Kentucky, he came up with some idea of like, all right, I'm not sure. Maybe they're going to insist on official business because they turned me down on the honeymoon thing. He was probably surprised about that. And then for the Kentucky trip, he's like, well, I'm going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is still there. That's official business. Give me a plane. And they probably said, well, we told them there had to be some official business involved last time. Fine. We'll send it. It's going to be back in one day. Sending a plane to Scotland and France and Italy for a honeymoon, and who knows when it's going to come back. That's just a bad idea. This one's going to be back in the hangar tonight. It's only going to Kentucky and back. Okay, fine. But, did he learn his lesson? No, he apparently did not, and neither did his wife. Now, of course, she's apologizing. And who knows? I guess we're supposed to think he grew he's grown in office, everybody. This is the big Mnuchin pivot. All right. Well, I don't know. That was more time than I really needed to spend on that story. But it's a hell of a story, and it's just revealing about what kind of people the Trump guys really are. I took a quick look at the Politico story that I mentioned the other day about Flynn backing this for-profit nuclear scheme inside the Trump transition to see whether at any point they mention where did they want to build these nuclear power plants. And they doesn't say it in this, but it does reference the Marshall Plan, this so-called Marshall Plan, a reference to, of course, the post-World War II U.S. plan to rebuild Europe, and from which it took its name. And it's this ambitious business proposal, they say, obtained by Newsweek in June that would bring economic development, jobs, security, stability, and shared prosperity to the region. That, of course, being the Middle East. And there's a link and there's a big PDF report on it. And I thought I would open it up and see if we can scan that and get some confirmation. Were they planning to build nuclear power plants in the UAE? Yes, I can immediately see it up at the top. UAE, among others. This is from the ACU Strategic Partners, LLC. which includes ACU, International Power Generators, and this Exco Dynamics company. A U.S.-based project providing nuclear power plants, a secure fuel cycle, and a shared security partnership for the Middle East. The overview here says over 20 nuclear power projects are now under development in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Kuwait, Jordan, and the UAE, among others, are now constructing nuclear power plants or examining ways of establishing their nuclear power capabilities. These development efforts present a number of major challenges involving the potential proliferation of nuclear weapons. You see, dual-use reactors. ACU, a U.S. company, has developed a practical strategy to prevent nuclear weapons proliferation. That sounds like a good thing. In the Middle East, that simultaneously reinforces shared interests of the U.S., Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Israel, and other Mideast countries in security, stability, and shared prosperity. ACU is developing international power generators, IPG, a partnership among the U.S., Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, and the UAE, designed to own and operate 40 nuclear power reactors in the Middle East with a fully integrated, secure in and out fuel service. In other words, it's Uber, but for nuclear reactors. Is that basically what we're saying? It sounds like, well, by the way, what are we actually talking about here? We're privatizing nuclear anti-proliferation efforts of the government. That feels so good to me to be able to say that we finally privatized anti-proliferation work for the United States government. How? Well, you call Uber for nuclear power plants, and they bring fuel packs that can only be, dropped into this special kind of reactor, and you can get all the power you want out of it, but you can't use it as a breeder reactor to make plutonium or enriched uranium for bombs, because when the fuel cell is spent, you've got to eject it and then send it back for your deposit. I don't know. Maybe. It sounds like what they're driving at. What the hell? Let's see if we can figure out what this plan is. It may not lead to the juiciest news, but damn it, we'll understand something about this. ACU is developing this IPG project, okay? IPG, in turn, also establishing Exco Dynamics, a new public-private partnership developed in concert with relevant U.S. government agencies and the countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council to protect the nuclear power plants, related infrastructure in the surrounding region in order to provide zones of security, stability, and prosperity for at least the full life of the reactors, approximately 80 years, after which, F off, you're on your own. Now, that's interesting. Provide security for them. What does that mean? I don't know. Who could do it? Eric Prince? Sure, why not? I bet that's where we end up. Exco Dynamics. That sounds like one of his dumb names, too, right? And didn't they change their name to Z, which starts with an X, X-I-Z? Not Z. That would start with a Z in my alphabet, but everybody else's alphabet, it's an X. Together, the components of the IPG project create a Middle East Marshall Plan funded by Mideast governments, which makes it not the Marshall Plan. No U.S. government funding or guarantees are required to finance the IPG project, as it will be funded entirely by Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries, which makes it not at all suspicious. The two essential features of the IPG nuclear power project that distinguish it from the nuclear power plants already under construction and in the planning stage in the Mideast are: one, its extensive and pervasive shared security partnership comes with guards, Blackwater guys. Is that what this is? And two, its secure in and out fuel cycle. Of course, whatever that is. These features make the IPG project starkly different from the Mideast nuclear plants currently under construction and proposed by Korea, Russia, France, and China, which provide neither a secure fuel cycle nor the type of advanced and broad security protections required to ensure the reliability of operation and the safety of the reactors from hostile elements such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda. See, what they're doing is they're replacing the bodegas that sell the workers Pringles potato chips and RC Cola with these little unmanned kiosks. Yeah, I heard all about that one yesterday. Another great day for Silicon Valley on Twitter yesterday with their latest innovation, Uber, but for something else. Let's get through with this here. IPG will provide a program of mutually assured security, that's not usually the word that comes after that one, mutually assured security to all participating Mideast countries through establishing Exco Dynamics, a public-private partnership which will rely on leading companies in the defense and intelligence industries for state-of-the-art security tools and technologies to provide new shared intelligence awareness, enhanced warning, and more effective defense architectures. Building on U.S. and allied defense architectures already in place in the region, the partnership, that is to say, taxpayers underwriting the security of setting up the new private security with the armed forces. The partnership will provide new opportunities and additional capabilities to address a multitude of security-related concerns. It will stabilize the region as well as promote economic development and shared prosperity. It will serve as an iron bridge tying together the national interests of the U.S. and the Middle East allies. Now, the IPG fuel cell cycle will be secured by ensuring that all enrichment of nuclear fuel for the fleet of power reactors will be performed outside the Middle East, and all spent fuel will be removed from the region as soon as it has cooled sufficiently by highly secure transport, which will, of course, mean putting them in airplanes which will later be shot down with Stinger missiles, raining nuclear waste all over the area. Fantastic idea. The enrichment services in the U.S. will be supplied by a black box company. In other words, one with a proprietary process that no one can find out about because it's proprietary. But all we can tell you is it supplies enriched uranium to all over the Middle East. But don't you worry about that. A black box company that controls the materials and technologies under U.S. national and IAEA safeguards, maybe, in a facility jointly owned by the U.S. and the Gulf states. Wow, jointly owned by the governments. That is dedicated solely to providing enrichment and fabrication of fuel for IPG. They make their own proprietary fuel pellets, you see. All spent nuclear fuel will be removed from the Middle East and stored in secure, safe facilities subject to U.S. consent rights and IAEA oversight, which, of course, also means that all of the rest of the world's spent nuclear fuel ends up in Yucca Mountain, too. Yay! This long-term secure in and out nuclear fuel cycle is an essential strategic component of IPG that provides unique security advantages for Mideast stability and preventing nuclear proliferation, thus strengthening Israel's security. Of course! You can see immediately how, what? The ACU IPG architecture is specifically designed to provide nuclear power to the Middle East consistent with U.S. non-proliferation gold standards without risks of uranium enrichment, spent fuel reprocessing, plutonium separation, or responsibility for nuclear waste. Why would anybody want to take responsibility for nuclear waste, right? Any of which could undermine regional security as well as erode U.S. defense support. I see what they mean by increasing Israel's security. If these countries can't use these materials to make bombs, they won't drop them on Israel, presumably. But maybe they wouldn't be dropping them on Israel now because it's already in their interest not to, and it would jeopardize their relationship with the United States, which loves the ever-loving crap out of Israel, right? So, anyway, but this, I think we've gotten to the bottom of this thing. There's another page or two. You can read it for yourself, I guess. I'll give you the link to it, but I think we've figured this one out. That's probably what they were talking about, and that's why Eric Prince is interested in this after all. And I guess if you have an insider spy like Flynn pushing the deal, it's only that much more likely to go through. Pretty amazing. I'm glad we found it. We'll probably be hearing more about it in the days to come. What will you be hearing in the hours to come? When you stay tuned, as you should, because it's, thank God, it's Jovidi Thursday here on Netroots Radio. That's coming up next on the after show. Here's the stories they've got lined up for you. Trump is refusing to pay a court-ordered $17,000 for a big, beautiful wall to keep rising ocean levels from inundating his golf course in Ireland. The Trump administration almost has its final pieces in place to restrict voting rights ahead of 2020, and a court decision against a dark money charter school group is great news for democracy. What about the last half? The report that the Department of Defense calling something antithetical to American values. A Marine Staff Sergeant is kicked out of the Corps for flying a white nationalist flag.
NetRootsRadio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, it's about time they took some action on this. Whatever happened to those guys flying the Navy SEAL flags or insignia and the Trump flags off of the back of the pickup truck. They never did figure that one out. They got this Marine Corps sergeant. We'll see whether they can connect those two cases next on the After Show with Wink and Justice.